Welcome to this Ksat 12 special, looking back at the fall of Saigon 50 years later. You know, 50 years is a long time. Memories fade, things are lost, history is forgotten. We did not want that to happen to the men and women from San Antonio who served in Vietnam. We are standing here at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, just outside the Tobin Center. Almost 10,000 people were right here in 1986 when this plaza was dedicated. More than 2.5 million Americans served in the Vietnam conflict. More than 58,000 U.S. lives were lost. Here in San Antonio, the Edgewood School District had the most Latino American casualties of the entire war. The Edgewood class of 1967 had 14 deaths in 1968 alone. The connection between Edgewood and Vietnam is where we begin our coverage tonight. We sat down with Edgewood veterans who say duty was their driving force, and they meet every week to share and support one another, tied together by the terror that was the war in Vietnam.
When I say Vietnam to you, what do you think of?
Wow. Friends I lost.
Bad place, very bad place.
What do you think of?
A lot of emotions.
My initial gut feeling is, well, why were we in Vietnam? I'm sure we're stopping communism from spreading, right? So that was my whole thing. I didn't really understand the protest. War in itself is unpopular. The Vietnam War only because, you know, I was 19, 20 at the time, and all my peers were protesting. You know, they say, hey, the draft, I'm going to burn my draft card. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Hey, it's immoral, you know, and I don't want to go to a war that I don't believe in. For me, being the naive 20-year-old, I wasn't the wiser. I got drafted, I win. When I arrived in Vietnam, you're coming in on a plane. I flew into Cam Bay, and we were coming in for a landing, and then the pilot is saying, hey, we're going to taxiing in. If you feel the plane coming in for a landing and we take off, that means we're under attack. So we're flying into Vietnam, you know, cold turkey. Well, guess what? We come in and take off again. So we were under attack. Right away, you know, we had an air base in Long Binh, and which was always being attacked. You're there, you know, doing your job, and you sort of just get numb, you know, to incoming rockets, shooting your weapon and stuff. You know, I was not in the front line, but I was in a combat zone.
We got hit one time by an ambush on a river up there close to the Ben Hoa River, which separates North and South Vietnam. I was in the riverbed. There was bullets hitting all over me like this, and I felt like there was a shield right around me, because the rocks breaking from the bullets were hurting me more than the bullets, and they were shattering. So we lost 4 guys that time. We went out on a detail operation, and we got hit both ends and in the middle. And of course, he's a radio man, and we got like 3 Tricoms right in front of us. Well, I didn't have a radio, all I had was my light back, so I was light enough that I could jump away and avoid the explosion, but he had his backpack plus the radio. He couldn't move fast enough. Of course, he took the brunt of all 3 grenades. He just totally blew the side of his body. We were going up a hill one time, and again, another U-shaped ambush, and all of a sudden I hear a rocket come by, and the guy next to it gets his head blown off. Literally gets his head blown off. The only thing, he was standing, the only thing was left was the right side of his jaw right here.
On our very first sortie, we lost a plane. We lost 2 pilots and 3 crew members. That was our first sortie. We were constantly around the clock flight operations. And then also fishing pilots out of the water, that kind of stuff. The time came when we went to general quarters at one time. It was in late April, early May. The Marines were having a hell of a time in Hue. They called us in. They needed gasoline, ammunition, supplies, and we took on the dead and wounded. That was tough.
We're here today to recognize and honor the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
We had a lot of people that duty was their driving force right out of high school.
And the thing is, you can see that every Memorial Day, it's the same family since, 1983, when they first started doing that show up for the roll call.
I look at it as thank God that I was spared, because so many weren't. In every memorial, I see the mothers, the grandmothers, brothers and sisters related to the ones that didn't come back. That could have been me. You know, I would have never had my daughters. I would have never married my wife, and so on. And the memory keeps on coming. You know, it just takes you back. You know, and so grateful. And a lot of times, God, why me? Why was I spared?
All right.
We're waiting for this guy. Limo just drove up.
We get together every Wednesday at various little hole-in-the-wall restaurants. We serve good hot coffee, good tacos. These group of folks are no different from when they were and I was 20 years old.
You went to Holy Cross too.
Yeah, that one we used to call
Eater.
Heart of gold. There's definitely a brotherhood.
And we only meet for like a couple of hours for breakfast, for tacos, you know. But yet, if anybody's got anything to say, or we see somebody that needs to open up, you know, we'll pursue them.
They shared a common bond, and you can talk to each other and share, and you can understand the pain somewhat that they're going through. It's a bond.
This is the kind of stuff that we lived in. You look at us and we're all tattered and torn. This is one of those caves that they would have, you know, and the tunnels. We didn't want to mess with it, so what we did is we got some C4 and we put it in and we blew it up instead of having normally we'd get the smallest guy with a flashlight, go in there and dig down, but the sergeant said, forget it, we'll just blow it.
Would you do it again?
Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Physically, I don't think I'll do it, but right here, absolutely.
Proud to say that I was not a draft dodger.
Yeah.
I probably served, and to this day, I can tell you, Steve, that I would do it again. I would do it again.
Tattered and torn, but the Edgewood bond is still there. Coming up on Saigon to San Antonio, the women who answered their country's call and what they faced when they came home. And the story of one Vietnam refugee who escaped Saigon and ended up in San Antonio. How she paid back the country she says saved her. Welcome back to 50 years after the fall, from Saigon to San Antonio. In a moment, we'll hear what it was like when Saigon fell 5 decades ago from those who were there. But first, many people forget how many women answered the call of duty during the Vietnam conflict. An estimated 10,000 women served as nurses, administrative roles, military intelligence, war correspondents, photojournalists, and more. 2 female Vietnam vets saw firsthand the human cost of serving in Vietnam.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Oh, I enlisted. Being a nurse, I came in as an officer, so that I didn't actually enlist. I signed up. You cannot be a nurse in the Air Force and not go to Wilford Hall at some time or other.
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, sure enough, wound up in Vietnam at Da Nang Air Force Base, better known as Rocket City, because of our friendly neighbors who like to shoot rockets into the base every night at 2 o'clock. So it was sort of a routine. At 2 o'clock, you woke up and to a siren, rolled out of bed, rolled under the bed, and then you got the all clear, so you got back into bed and went back to sleep. I had 17 nurses and 102 med techs. So, and it kept us going.
All that you were in charge of.
That's right.
What did you often see when you greeted these aircraft?
A plane full of people that really needed help. These young kids coming off the field with parts missing, and how they were going to handle their lives at that point. And that was probably the most stressful part of the job. One of the things that I thought was a good thing, we did a lot of what they call MedCap missions. And I remember one occasion, the mayor had opened his facilities for the MedCap unit. And they would come in and get treated for various things that they had. And as we were driving away, we heard shotgun shots, and they had killed them because they allowed us there to help those people. And it makes you really, at that point, that's when you really wonder what you're doing there. Are you doing any good?
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And that I will obey.
And that I will obey.
The orders of the President of the United States.
The orders of the President of the United States.
I was there 24 hours, and I was NCOIC of a unit of guys, of a whole team of guys. NCOIC means non-commissioned officer in charge. I'm 19 years old, and it was a little rough, to say the least. I learned the very first day, I learned how to roll up in a mosquito net to sleep, because if you didn't do that, the bugs would eat you up alive, and the heat was absolutely unbearable. You learned to live with it like that. We were supposed to go have our meals at the hospital, and you had to walk around all these Quonset huts or everything else, which were wards. And over here to the right, they had literally pushed the gurneys of the wounded. They were pleading and crying, blood everywhere you could see, and they'd just reach out their hand. And of course, I stopped and talked. And I did that more often than not. And sometimes I held her hand until it went limp. I never cried. I don't know why I didn't, but I did. Because I had a job to do. So I compartmentalized all of that in my head to be able to go back to work. And it worked, it was effective, until years later, they were still haunting me.
Yeah. You've cried since.
A lot. I don't want to forget those guys. So many people have. They were my comrades. I need to remember them.
Would you do it again?
Probably. Probably, just because, you know, I signed up to do something and I do what I say I'm going to do.
Would you do it again?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. Not ever. Like I said, I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. I would not have chosen to do anything different.
In 1993, near the Wall of Names, the Vietnam Women's Memorial was dedicated, honoring the women who served. Every Veterans Day and Memorial Day, vets and civilians who served during the war get together to share their stories, recognize soldiers who have served since, and welcome Gold Star families.
Everybody just wanted to leave, but except for the Marines. We had more work to do rescuing people. You know, we had babies thrown over the wall, just put them on a chopper with somebody.
The U.S. Embassy in Saigon was the focal point for the entire world as the North Vietnamese Army marched on that city. What was it like to be in Saigon during the war? It's a story that can only be told by the Marines who served there. 50 years after the fall, from Saigon to San Antonio. We'll be right back.
Saigon fell April 30th, 1975.
I was watching it on TV like everybody else.
Seeing all the planes, all the people that were evacuating.
Seeing those ships full of helicopters just dumped into the ocean, you know.
It just reinforced, why are we there? Why were we there if we're just going to turn around and leave?
I was at Keller Air Force Base. And with my fellow co-workers, we talked all day about that. It says, wow, bummer.
In March of 1965, the U.S. Marines became the first combat troops to land in Vietnam. 10 years later, they were the last to leave. Although most U.S. troops left in 1973 due to the Paris Peace Accords, the war still went on for another 2 years. April 29th and April 30th, 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of what was called a modern-day Dunkirk. As South Vietnam fell, Saigon became its evacuation center. Surrounding that city, 14 North Vietnamese Army divisions, nearly 200,000 troops. Operation Frequent Wind was the order to save all remaining Americans, third country nationals, and civilians. It became the largest helicopter evacuation in history. Pilots had to maneuver through enemy fire and horrible weather, including thunderstorms and haze that made visibility at times less than 1 mile. 2 embassy Marines, one from Edgewood ISD and one who lives in Kerrville, shared their stories about the attacks, the rescues, and the ultimate fall of Saigon.
I weighed 115 pounds.
Sopping wet.
Hey, man. I could actually run. Now, here I am, a kid from the West Side, high school education, stationed at the American Embassy in Saigon. To me, that was an honor. Went to school, time to go for me to go to Vietnam. And when I landed, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, what the hell am I doing here? The people weren't too happy to see us there. Back in the 60s, you didn't see homeless people asking for money. And that's the first thing I saw when I landed there. People in crutches, limbs missing, kids by themselves in the street. And the river just smelled horrible. I never forget that smell. Our mission was to take care, of course, the compound and all the diplomats, take care of the ambassador. We protected the embassy 24/7. When I got there and they gave me a tour of the embassy, the compound, and they took me up to the roof, I asked what those holes in the wall were for. And he said the embassy had been attacked by the Viet Cong in 1968. So all the bullet holes were still there.
What's the hardest thing you saw?
A mother coming in, trying to get into the embassy through the front gate with a child, a 1-year-old maybe. I want to say her left arm missing, and I think the bullet grazed her. And you could see the burn, and you could see the cheeks. I mean, she wanted to come into the embassy because she couldn't go anywhere else. She thought that if she came in the embassy, we'd get her help and we'd get her. I couldn't let her in. Couldn't let her in.
I never had any fear, but I was 23, 24, and I was bulletproof. And facts of the matter, we were just young Marine sergeants with an awful lot of responsibility. When we escorted the ambassador, we had like 30 routes, different routes we could take to get someplace. I liked being the escort with the ambassador because we'd keep a circle of safety around him. And if you got within that circle, you had a problem real quick. When something would happen, he couldn't see it. So, like if I was his escort, I'd say, look at that building over there. And he'd turn and look at it for a minute till I'd tell him he could look back. And then the guy over here would be getting the dog beat out of him, because he'd try and get into inside that circle. This is the last message that came out of the embassy, and I got the only copy in the world. It's been a long fight, and we have lost. With receipt, presidential message advising that evacuation of American Embassy Saigon must be completed before 03:45 local time. Took a little longer than that, about another hour. I was in the embassy with the ambassador, I think on the 2nd floor, and the major came down and said, hey, I got an order from the president, we got a book. And I never forget, the ambassador looked at him and said, all in good time, Major, all in good time. We had babies thrown over the wall, just put them on a chopper with somebody. We had a good system there. We had them going up the steps to the top deck for the 46s. We had the 53s would land in the courtyard. We'd load them based on weight. When the chopper would land, we had to hold them on the ground. And the backblast and the motors would blow them backwards. And you do that for a couple times, and then the exhaust would get to you and you'd go puke for a little bit, get cleared, sinuses cleared up, and then go at it again. When we got to Subic Bay, we had to get in formation on the deck and retrieved all our weapons. And none of them had a uniform because we left with the clothes on our back. And none of them had a regulation weapon. And it was the most scraggly bunch of people you ever seen. But I'd probably say that's the proudest I've ever been. They would have given their lives for that job to complete the mission. People need to know that. You have no idea what it does to our warrior ethos to make us pull away and leave. It just goes against everything we learned in boot camp. But these guys, they would have stayed to the last man and would thought nothing of it.
By the end of April 1975, 71 helicopters flew 682 individual flights, evacuating nearly 1,400 U.S. citizens and 6,000 third country nationals and South Vietnamese. Overall, more than 50,000 people were saved during fixed-wing evacuations, including almost 3,000 orphans. The last Marine to leave the U.S. Embassy was Master Sergeant Juan Jose Valdez, a San Antonio native. Valdez currently lives on the West Coast. If you'd like to learn more about Valdez and those final hours in Vietnam, you can check out this book, Last Men Out, by Bob Drury and Tom Clavin.
We were the first Vietnamese family to land in Anchorage, Alaska.
That's a legacy right there.
I think so. I thought all of the United States had snow and caribou.
After the break, she was one of the lucky ones, a young Vietnamese girl who got on one of those helicopters out of Saigon. She now calls San Antonio home. How does she feel about a war that still separates her family to this day? This KSAT 12 News special, 50 years after the fall, from Saigon to San Antonio. We'll be right back.
They brought in a bunch of young State Department people out of Hong Kong who had no idea of the situation. So I would be out at Thompson and I'd say, "Are you having a problem?" And he'd say, "Yeah, I can't take care of this guy." And I said, I'll handle that for you. And I'd turn and look at the guy and I say, "Don't say one word, just follow me." And I'd walk him up on the plane and I'd say, "They'll take care of you when you get to Guam." So he was safe. And so was his family.
The experience of leaving your home and country is something lost on most of us, but that's what happens in every war. Refugees fleeing for their lives. Thousands of Vietnamese eventually found a new home in the United States and here in San Antonio. Trin Warner was inspired to serve in the United States Air Force after being saved during the fall of Saigon.
My grandmother always worried that we couldn't go out at night. We couldn't just let anyone come to our house. It was a lot of scary things that I didn't understand it as a child, but I just knew that it was different probably than a regular childhood. You could hear from a distance bombs going off. We just called it the war. But it was distant. And then you could see the things on the news that was happening. And you can see the progress of the war moving down the map. My mother and my father left to go to Alaska in 1974. They went to set up house and they were going to send for us.
What was your April 30th like?
The couple of days leading up to it was knowing that at any time My grandmother was going to pick us up and we were going to have to go, go, go. We went right from school. I was still in my school clothes. It was crushing crowds. I think that was the scariest thing that I remember being small, was I was going to get crushed in this crowd. And we were all holding hands, making sure that we had contact with each other. And we all had passports that my grandmother kept, and then she handed us over. You know, once we went through the gate, it was 5 of us trying to get to where we're supposed to go. I left my grandmother and my aunt.
Is that hard?
I never saw my grandmother again. She died in a re-education camp. She was the person who took care of me. It was hard knowing that I wasn't going to see her again.
You see the iconic shot of the helicopter sitting on top of the embassy and this long line of people and this ladder, basically, that leads them up. You were one of those people?
I was one of those people. Had no idea what was going to happen. Had never flown before. I just literally followed my sister. We end up at the airport, and they load us up onto the back of, now I know it's a C-130. There was no strapping in or anything. It was a whole bunch of people just crammed into this this airplane, and then I started getting sick. We were in the air. We were headed to the Philippines. The guy, who now I know is a loadmaster, was trying to help because I was so sick. He was just really a nice guy, and I said, I'm going to do that. And I don't even know why it came into my head that I was going to wear that flight suit and do that job. My mother didn't know where we were while we were in the refugee camp. It took days before she found out that we made it out of Vietnam. We're in a refugee camp and somebody's got to come get us. My dad worked in Anchorage, Alaska, and that was where we ended up. I thought all of the United States had snow and caribou. I spoke no English whatsoever.
So you had to learn the language. Then you go to the Air Force.
I had 25 years of service in the United States Air Force. I wouldn't be here but for the service members who went to Vietnam. I want to thank all of the folks who served in Vietnam. I don't think they realize the legacy that they left in Vietnam to this day.
Trin and her family eventually moved to New Orleans. Many refugees found a new home along the Gulf Coast due to its similarities in climate and the fishing industry. After serving 20 years in the Air Force, Trin now practices law here in the Alamo City. And she says whenever she gets a chance, she personally thanks those who served in Vietnam.
This is like the future. If we talk again next year, so much will have changed.
Did you know that the UT Health Science Center hosts a yearly combat PTSD conference? Well, we caught up with one doctor who shared what's next in the frontier of helping our service members. But before we go to break, I want to tell you about a hero.
Sergeant Benavides' gallant choice to join voluntarily as comrades who were in critical straits, to expose himself constantly to withering enemy fire, and his refusal to be stopped despite numerous severe wounds saved the lives of at least 8 men.
Master Sergeant Roy Benavides was wounded in Vietnam as a member of the Army Special Forces. He learned to walk again at Brooke Army Medical Center after stepping on a landmine in 1965. 3 years later, he saved members of a 12-man patrol during a battle known as 6 Hours in Hell. Benavides recovered at Fort Sam Houston after receiving 37 bullet, bayonet, and shrapnel wounds during that fight. He received the Distinguished Service Cross, 4 Purple Hearts, and was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1981 by President Ronald Reagan. Numerous places have been named in his honor, including schools, a Navy ship, and a special edition G.I. Joe action figure. Roy Benavides passed away in 1998 at the age of 63. He was buried at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery with full military honors. We'll be right back.
my cousin going through Vietnam, and he passed away several years ago from cancer with Agent Orange.
I was affected by Agent Orange, and I contracted prostate cancer.
I've had 4 heart attacks. I got 6 stents in my heart, quadruple bypass from Agent Orange.
I came back what's now called PTSD. Well, that was 1970. Didn't have a term for this. I was very confused, very lost. As a woman, I had no one to talk to.
You know, we have a member at this post here that carried a suicide note in his pocket. He was in Vietnam. One of the nicest guys you want to meet. Nowadays, that shouldn't be happening.
Many times the biggest scars of war are unseen. Many Vietnam veterans have suffered from the traumas during their service, from combat to exposure to toxic substances like Agent Orange. As we were getting ready for this special, we reached out to dozens of Vietnam veterans who simply weren't ready to share their stories on or even off camera. It's not that unusual, but we wanted part of this special to be dedicated to those still suffering. It is never too late to get help. We attended the annual Combat PTSD conference hosted by the UT Health Science Center to learn more about the future of healing those invisible wounds of war with the help of AI, which is just one part of many options for help.
I don't think it's fully changed the game yet, but we're very well on the way of changing the game. We've built a tool that is called Socrates. It's named after the philosopher because it engages individuals in Socratic dialogue. Because it is a web application, it can be accessed from any device that has internet access. We wondered, can we leverage some of the new AI technology to deliver that exact same intervention, but make it available day and night whenever someone needs it, at all those times when a therapist would traditionally not be available, who can take a phone call in the middle of the night or has other appointments, which is usually when individuals need the most help. And so in order to do this, we built a tool that combines multiple different AI entities, which is what we call a multi-AI agent tool, to facilitate this. So even though the user only works directly with an AI therapist, the AI therapist is itself supported by 2 additional AI entities that monitor the dialogue between the user and the AI therapist and provide the AI therapist automatically with feedback for how to improve the Socratic dialogue and get better results. And so essentially what we're seeing is that individuals engage with it at all times. A lot of the users that we have so far in our trial, they described it as a safe practice ground because the tool itself, it's not like a human that I have to disclose my deepest, darkest secrets to. I'm able to tell the tool something and it doesn't judge me. It doesn't have any facial expressions. It just provides an answer factually based on what I provided it with. And a lot of our users said that that was comforting to them. As long as people know about these tools and try these tools, they have the ability to be convinced that it can be something that can either help them immediately or it helps them get into therapy because they realize, oh, this is what therapy could feel like. From that perspective, it is something that, can lower the barrier of entry for individuals and make them more likely to get the help from a human therapist that they need.
Here are some ways to get help. The latest treatment advances are being done at StrongStar over at UT Health San Antonio. You can visit the site for the current open clinical trials. Endeavor's Wellness Center, they provide in-person and virtual care for veterans, active duty, first responders, and their families. There's also Laurel Ridge Treatment Center and the VA's National Center for PTSD. In case of an emergency, call 911. You can also text or call 988 or chat online with the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can also text 838-255 or visit the Veterans Crisis Line. Remember, you're never alone. There are ways to get help. At one point, he famously had a quote where he said, I feel like I'm a hitchhiker in a Texas hailstorm. I can't get out of it, I can't run away from it, and I can't stop it.
Yep. That quote captures really the dilemma that LBJ confronted in connection with Vietnam.
Up next, President Lyndon B. Johnson took center stage during the height of the war in Vietnam. How did the war affect his legacy? We traveled to Austin to visit his presidential library to learn more. This Ksat 12 News special, 50 years after the fall, from Saigon to San Antonio. We'll be right back. Certain words and phrases strike a nerve for many Vietnam vets. Words like the draft, protests, Jane Fonda, and LBJ. Our 36th president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, wanted social justice to be a main highlight of his administration. But the war in Vietnam was something he could not avoid. His actions during the conflict impacted millions of people around the world. We sat down with Dr. Mark Lawrence, who was the director of the LBJ Presidential Library and Museum at the time of this interview, to learn more about the Texan who became president and the double-edged sword that was Vietnam.
This is a topographical map of Ksat, which was a battle that played out in the northern part of South Vietnam. When he came into office in November 1963, he wanted the focus to be on the domestic arena. That's where he had always achieved his greatest breakthroughs as a politician, and that's where he wanted to leave his mark as president. As Vietnam unavoidably became a bigger issue, he grudgingly at first, had to pay more attention, and then of course it became really all-consuming. Of course, we have these the phone conversations scattered throughout the exhibit.
I just stayed awake last night thinking about this thing. The more I think of it, I don't know what in the hell. It looks like we're getting into another Korea. I don't think it's worth fighting for, and I don't think we can get out. And it's just the biggest damn mess. It is. It's an awful mess.
He calls it a mess very early on. And he goes on like that, listing all of the problems, all of the frustrations. He was aware of the problems and went forward anyways. Why? Well, one of the major reasons is I think that at the end of the day, they were Americans. They had the most impressive arsenal, the most impressive economy that the world had ever seen. How could the United States fail in the face of a challenge in this far-off, impoverished country, even if the Soviets and Chinese were involved? They just couldn't understand the world in which they couldn't achieve their objectives. We get some complaints about the wording on the Gulf of Tonkin label there. I don't think anything is technically wrong.
Obviously, these were fabricated reports of destroyers being attacked.
Yeah.
I mean, does that explain why he used that as the reason to go to war?
Let's remember this is August 1964. LBJ is about 3 months away from facing the voters in the presidential election. Here's his chance to be elected in his own right as president. He did not want Vietnam to become the big issue that would shape that campaign. And yet, he wanted at the same time to demonstrate that he was competent and capable in the arena of foreign policy. He wasn't enthusiastic about the war, but he also believed, I think, to his core, that if he didn't do what was necessary to prevent the collapse of South Vietnam in the face of communist aggression, that he would lose all his political effectiveness.
Accordingly, I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
I do think that on Vietnam, Lyndon Johnson looked at Nixon as the candidate who would be more likely to do what was necessary to achieve American objectives in Vietnam. And I don't think that Lyndon Johnson, as he left the presidency, had actually given up on the possibility of achieving the American goal, which was a stable, secure South Vietnam that could survive indefinitely.
Are you looking for recognition? I said, no, man, I'm doing this for every Vietnam veteran. You can look at this piece. You can remember your friends. You can remember that you survived and you made it. You're here.
After the break, they pay tribute with paint and passion. We're going to talk to the artists who have created some of the war murals here in the Alamo City. And photographer Adam Higgins caught up with the company Vietnam Battlefield Tours to see what it was like to return to that country decades later. We'll be right back. The VFW Post 76, right across the river from Ksat 12 and not far from here, is the oldest post in Texas. This past Thanksgiving break, the post, which opened in 1917, saw a new mural go up. A mural painted by a ghost. It's a welcomed addition to Military City, USA, joining a mural at the corner of Commerce in Colorado. It is murals like these, aided by Centro Art Everywhere, that start the storytelling, the tributes, sharing war stories, and saying thank you for years to come.
Like a guy had asked me, he goes, hey, well, why are you doing this? You know, are you looking for recognition? I said, no, man, I'm doing this for every Vietnam veteran. You know, my father's a Vietnam veteran. You know, I know what it's like. I grew up with it. This is real. Dad was Marine Corps, 69 and 70. He was stationed at Da Nang, and then from there he went all over the place doing reconnaissance and stuff like that. He was hit twice, 2 Purple Hearts. He got, I believe, stabbed and shot. So those C-130s is what those planes are called at the end. And they see that little smoke that's coming down. That's actually Agent Orange. There's a lot of veterans that have died because of Agent Orange exposure due to cancer. And I wanted to line the campaign ribbon with empty boots for all the soldiers that were killed in the war. What I find kind of fascinating about it is I painted all of these the same way. So as far as the boots that are on the far left side that are kind of faded and ghostly, that just happened over time. You see everything there, right? And it's pretty, it looks, you know, it's got good composition, it's good. But in the background, you see the napalm going off. Right. So that's how these guys are. They stand up, they're like soldiers, and they show themselves as who they are. But in the background, they've got all this trauma that they're trying to control at the same time too. That's the reason why I wanted to put the napalm back there. I think that people should take from this, especially veterans, because this is who it's for. That you can come over here and you can reflect, you can remember, because it's not gonna go away. You just have to deal with it, right? So if you come over here, you can look at this piece, you can remember your friends, you can remember that you survived and you made it, you're here. You know, we can move forward now. It's time to move forward. And you can leave whatever energy, bad, negative energy you want, leave it on the wall. Leave it there. The sun will rise tomorrow.
Hey, my name is Abraham Ksat, aka Ghost. This has been in the works for about 3 years now. The idea was presented to these guys here at the VFW 76 about 3 years ago. I've always just kind of been the artist that they were gonna have, like, this guy's gonna wanna do it, you know, and he's an Army veteran, he's an artist, he's from here. I showed them the original design. My mock-up actually shows, my digital mock-up actually shows this whole thing covered up with this. This was gonna be on this entire wall. I had to kind of alter the design many times, and the design was like a very crucial thing. They wanted the Purple Heart guys to be in there, along with the POW guys to be in there. So I had to sort of design a whole new medal. It's a lot to get used to, basically. I didn't think I was afraid of heights, or I thought I was okay with heights. That's not even that high. It's like 35 feet, almost 40 feet. When I get the basket all the way up there to that height, there's a physical sensation that I don't really have too much control over. It's like the floor beneath me starts spinning a little bit. I really have zero control over it. So that's what starts happening up there at that height, and try to tell my brain, like, hey, like, calm down, it's all good, you're good, like, go. You know what I mean? Keep going. It's just kind of shaking the jitters off, I guess. It's validating. It's validating to all the decades that I've spent as an artist perfecting my craft and trying to get good at this. The overall message is like unity as a nation and as a people, regardless of our differences and our backgrounds and all of those superficial things that divide us. Proud to have done it, and I'll be looking forward to the next one.
And by the way, when we asked veterans what song takes them back to their time in Vietnam, most said, "We got to get out of this place," by the Animals from 1965. That takes us to our next story. Photographer Adam Higgins caught up with Ed Tex Steitler of Vietnam Battlefield Tours to talk about veterans traveling back to Vietnam to see what the country looks like today, 5 decades later.
Someone saying I'd never go back, or that, you know, they have reasons for saying that, and I don't argue with them. Okay. I had a nightmare that was reoccurring. It was vivid. The place was real. What happened was not real. I haven't had that nightmare since that first trip back. It's gone. So I know, you know, emotionally, I know it's something there. I graduated from Bernie High School in 1965, enlisted in January of '66, arrived in Vietnam late September of '66. I was assigned to 7th Marines, was in Da Nang twice, once to go on a convoy to Hue and once to come home. We went south of Quang Ngai to a place called Duc Pho, Operation Deckhouse, De Soto. We were there for 3 months. I lost my squad leader, Platoon Sergeant Charles Esters. He was killed January 30th, '67. 21st of September, we were at Liberty Bridge, the north end of Liberty Bridge, and we were going to cross the Vujia River. We'd worked all day. We found TNT and pig pens. We found evidence. You know, these were collaborators, essentially. But as we left, I was up on top of the Amtrak, and one shot hit me under the jaw. I had my mouth open talking, which is not unusual. The bullet came out my mouth, shattered most of my teeth. I don't see up here. The concussion hit the bottom of the retina, and at the time I had 16 days left to go in country. So I was medevaced from Liberty Bridge to NSA in Da Nang. Came out of surgery, I was wired shut. I was there about 5 days. They flew me to Great Lakes, Illinois. So I spent 8 months there. I came home. I went to work till the fall and went to Southwest Texas. Taught school 27 years. And I did not look back at Vietnam for 20 years. In 2001, I went with a group called Military Historical Tours, and I was able to get 2 of my squad members to go with me. And we went to the Hill, 65, we went to Duc Pho, we went to where Charles was killed at a memorial service, we went to where I was wounded. It was a pretty comprehensive return. And I had my wife with me. So I was fortunate that I went, and I told her when we got back, I said, I want to keep doing this. I filled up 3 passports. I'm leaving Saturday with a group of 18. Conservative 50 times I've been back since 2001. Part of our deal in forming the company, Vietnam Battlefield Tours, was we were going to be a nonprofit and we were not going to pay ourselves. All of our itineraries were based on those on the tour. We didn't do a cookie cutter tourist tour. I get the command chronology, I look at the map coordinates, I have the maps, I have everything. So if you tell me you were involved in this operation at this location, I know where it is, I can find it. We climb your hill, we go to your place where something happened, and that's how the itinerary is broken down. When we get to that special place, you know, going in, you're going to have some apprehension, you know, some nervousness, I don't know, you know. But when we get them to that place, it's like, I can see it in their face. It's like it just, you know, and then we hug up. You know, if you need help, we help each other. There might be some tears, might not, you know, but whatever it is, sometimes they'd want to be left alone. Let me do this right here. Stand back, let him do it. But when he's done, you know, gather him up. So is it beneficial? Absolutely. I think it's closure. It brings, you know, in some cases, you know, 50 years before it circle back, and you can be comfortable with it.
Before we wrap things up, recognizing our soldiers still missing in action and a long overdue message to our veterans.
We weren't welcome home. We didn't have a fanfare, and none of that.
The first thing they told us is, we're going to give you some time. I want you to go to PX and get some civilian clothes. He says, because you do not want to go to the airport in your uniform.
The cabs would just drive by and spit at you.
The guys were spit on. They were called baby killers. They tried to apply for a job. They were rejected.
They were throwing things. They were yelling. They were calling you names. I got spit on.
It was very disheartening, to say the least.
I didn't do blood, sweat, and tears in this uniform to be told I can't wear it home, you know.
Even when I was called names and horrible things when I came back, deep down inside, I've always been proud of what I did.
As you just heard, it is something long overdue. So before we go tonight, we want to say something that should have been said long before this. Welcome home to our Vietnam veterans, and thank you for your service. Thank you to the men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you to the veterans who served in the final hours during the fall of Saigon. We also don't forget those missing still. Right now, 1,573 are still listed as missing in action or non-recoverable from the Vietnam conflict. Among them, 8 men from Bexar County. 5 have markers at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. The Defense POW MIA accounting agency in Hanoi continues to work to find and identify every missing U.S. soldier in Southeast Asia. We thank them for their continued efforts, and we hope all of our soldiers return home soon. To all of our veterans, to those who enlisted and those who were drafted, thank you for taking time out of your lives to answer the call all those years ago. I also want to say a special thank you to the veterans tonight who trusted us with their stories, opening up and sharing your stories to help teach the next generation what the war in Vietnam was like. For all of us at Ksat 12, thank you for joining us. Before we go, one final message from one of our Vietnam veterans.
What they need to remember is that we were called upon to serve. We are proud that we served. We think we made a difference in someone's life. We, our comrades, the United States, was called upon to make a difference for South Vietnam.